Are you ready for 7 days of Subway Series talk? Your ears are going to be melting off by how much the country, nay, the national media wants, is dying, is begging, may even be fixing a New York Mets, New York Yankees World Series. I, like you, don't want to see a replay of the 2000 Subway Series. By the way, all these idiots like ESPN and Fox, they're salivating at all the advertising money that's going to come in potentially for the TV ratings of a Subway Series. Let's go back in time. Let's get in our DeLorean to go back to the year 2000, which was the last time and the only time we've had a Subway Series. That Subway Series back in 2000 between the New York Yankees and the New York Mets had the lowest TV ratings for any World Series matchup up to that time. In comparison, the 1998 World Series between the New York Yankees and San Diego Padres averaged over 20 million viewers per game. The following year, in 1999, the World Series between the New York Yankees and the Atlanta Braves averaged over 23, almost 24 million viewers per game. And after that 1999 matchup, which I get, again, almost 24 million people would tune in to see each one of those 1999 games. And that was not a competitive World Series, if you remember. The New York Yankees swept the Atlanta Braves. That was a very underpowered Braves team. They swept them. It was over in 4 games. They go from that to the 2000 Subway Series, and it was a dead drop, like a rocket falling from the sky. The Subway Series in 2000 averaged just, and I mean a smidgen over 18 million viewers a game. That is almost 6 million viewers less than the previous year. And in 2001, the Yankees, yes, were again back in the World Series, but this time it was against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And that World Series averaged 24.5 million viewers. All of a sudden, there's no Subway Series. The World Series TV ratings shoot up by over 6.5 million viewers, more or less in line with the World Series from 1999, 2 years previously. And you may be right to ask, look, Dorian, you keep telling us about 4 World Series at the turn of the century, and the New York Yankees were in each and every one of them. All right, well, we'll do one more. The 2002 World Series featured the Anaheim Angels, who are now the LA Angels, against the San Francisco Giants. So it was an all freeway series. It's all California series. That 2002 World Series averaged 19.2 million viewers a game, over 1 million viewers more than the much ballyhooed 2000 Subway Series between the Yankees and Mets. God forbid the Subway Series actually happens, because no one outside of the New York metropolitan area is going to watch it. But you go right now onto ESPN, you know what one of the articles on their baseball site is? What are the ideal matchups? Subway Series, Yankee, Dodgers. It's like, guys, what about the Guardians? It's disgusting. By the way, goodbye, good riddance to the Philadelphia Phillies. But I do feel bad for their catcher JT Realmuto. He was hit twice in that New York Mets matchup in the National League Divisional Series. I'm like, dude, how many welts is this guy recovering from this past week? It was, I think one hit him in the hip, and I forget where else he got hit as well. Something else that has stood out for me, not just the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers. There's been such bad relief pitching this whole playoffs. So many of the runs have been given up by the bullpen. It reminded me of college baseball, like pure, unadulterated chaos at the end of the game. I always remember when I met with Coach Witten, the pitching coach for Florida International University. He said, college baseball is chaos. These playoffs have been chaotic in a good way, I guess, but it's also frustrating because you think, oh, we're bringing in our big arms, our big bullpen. By the way, Phillies, after all that trash talk, they were off for 5 days. They were the number 1 seed, I think, in the entire playoffs. Off for 5 days, and they came out flat, maybe? Yes and not really, because the very first pitch that they saw, Kyle Schwarber hit that leadoff home run on Saturday against the New York Mets. But after that, it was like, good evening, good night, goodbye. The whole Phillies lineup, the vaunted Phillies lineup, the bad boys of 2022 and 2023, they hit 186 as a team. Maybe the Braves manager Brian Snitker was right, because the Phillies gave Brian Snitker crap because he was saying last year the Braves had 5 or 6 days off before the playoffs started for them. And he said something to the effect of, we just weren't used to facing live velocity for way too long. 5 or 6 days off is way too long for a baseball team. And the Braves stunk up the National League Division Series last year in 2023 when they lost to the Phillies in 4 games. And now the Phillies, they got a taste of that medicine. Now, I don't hear anyone saying, you know what, screw the Braves, they don't respect us, whatever. It's like, well, maybe the Braves are right, because the Braves got knocked out 2 years in a row after a long layoff. I don't know the answer. One of the questions I always ask my guests is the whole fantasy thing is, what's 1 or 2 things you would implement if you're the Major League Baseball commissioner? And there have been a handful of them who have said, let's get rid of the bye. Like, we can't be having this where the best teams in the regular season consistently get knocked out. This is now the 3rd year we've done this. I think 3 teams in 3 years with home field advantage have actually advanced out of the Divisional Series in both the American League and the National League. Why not get rid of the bye and just have all 6 teams play 2 days after the regular season stops? 2 days off allows people to get a little bit of rest. It almost allows you to reset your pitching staff, your pitching rotation. Because normally in the regular season, you only have 1 day off. And the only time you get more than that is during the All-Star break, which everyone gets like 4 or 5 days off. But everyone gets it. It's not like people continue to play. I don't know if everyone's going to be rooting for the Cleveland Guardians to prevent 9 days of HE double hockey sticks. Subway Series, ESPN, Fox. Are we all Guardian fans for the next 9 days? Maybe. I was really surprised when the Guardians beat the Detroit Tigers. I was like, for sure the Tigers are closing them out. The Tigers had 2 different opportunities. They couldn't do it. I was really surprised. And I was even more surprised because I talked down on the Guardians because of their recent playoff history where their offense scores no runs. I mean, 0 runs in the playoffs. And these Sons of Guns ended up, I think they scored 7 runs in the clinching Game 5 in the American League Divisional Series against the Detroit Tigers. I was like, where is this offense coming from? I hope they keep it up against the New York Yankees because, again, it's not like I don't like the Yankees. I just hate ESPN. I hate Fox. I hate all the major publications who just blow smoke up the Yankees' booties. I'm done. Don't stop trying to make me believe that Aaron Judge is the best player in the game. He's a very good player who happens to play for the most famous team in baseball. I watched that entire San Diego Padres and LA Dodgers series, and I seriously reflected for like half a second thinking, I am fortunate, I am appreciative that I'm alive at the same time, and I could, through technology, can watch basically every single game from the greatest baseball player of all time, Shohei Ohtani. It's unbelievable. This is the greatest player we have ever seen. And it's going to be another 50, 70 years until we see someone who said that we're going to be able to say, this guy may be better than Ohtani, but he's not going to be anytime soon. So right now, what's the World Series matchup that you want to see? I thought about this and I'm like, I don't necessarily like the Dodgers. I don't necessarily like the Mets, but I wouldn't mind to see the New York Mets against the Cleveland Guardians because there's a certain poetry about that because Francisco Lindor, the shortstop for the New York Mets, used to play for the Cleveland Indians until they obviously changed their name to the Guardians. That'd be great because that 2016 Cleveland Indians team should have won the World Series against the Chicago Cubs. And for Lindor, I remember back in 2017, the very next year, the Indians, that's what they were called back then, they were arguably the best team along with the LA Dodgers. And in 2017, if you remember, the Indians set the record for the most consecutive wins in Major League Baseball history. I think they ended up winning like 26 games, which is 26 games in a row, which is it is unfathomable. You've basically gone an entire month in baseball without losing. And I distinctly remember him saying at the end of the season when they got knocked out by, I don't remember who they got knocked out by in 2017, but he had said, this is a rude awakening. I'm paraphrasing. This is a rude awakening because I fully expected to be playing until the first week of November, meaning Game 6, Game 7 of the World Series. And unfortunately, the cheating Houston Astros beat the LA Dodgers in the 2017 World Series. But I genuinely think a 2024 World Series matchup between Cleveland and the New York Mets, that's what I want to see. All right, so I'm going to raise what I'm drinking as a toast. Go Guardians. Not because I don't like the Dodgers, not because I don't like the Mets, even though I just genuinely said I don't like the Mets or the Dodgers. Go Guardians. Please save us from a Subway Series. For the good of baseball, it would be better. No joke. It would be better if we don't have a Subway Series for the good of baseball. If it's Cleveland, LA, if it's Cleveland, New York Mets, fantastic. Just no Subway Series. Actually, even New York Yankees, LA Dodgers, but no Subway Series, please. Go Guardians or go Dodgers, go Yankees, go Mets, go anybody, just no Subway Series. And the last thing about that Dodgers Padres National League Division Series matchup, how in the world did the LA Dodgers pitchers shut out the San Diego Padres for 24 consecutive innings? My mind was melting down in Game 5. I was like, how in the world does a team this stacked as the San Diego Padres fail to score? And I think they only ended up getting 2 or 3 hits in Game 5 in LA. Again, you're talking about the Detroit Tigers who had a chance to close out Cleveland. San Diego had a chance to close out LA twice. Didn't happen. And it wasn't it just didn't happen. It's almost as if they didn't really roll over and get their bellies tickled, because in Game 4, they left a boatload of players on base. In Game 5, there were no players on base. But that horribly injured LA Dodgers starting pitching, I still haven't processed how in the world the starting pitching of the LA Dodgers beat the San Diego Padres, because just last week I was like, there's no way the Dodgers are getting out of the Divisional Series. No way. That pitching staff is insane. Like, insanely not bad, just insanely injured. Like, congratulations to the Dodgers. Unfortunately for our next guest, the Padres are out of the playoffs, because I thought that he would be helping and inspiring the Padres play deep into October. I'm happy to be joined this week by Joe Rathburn, a San Diego-based musician. Joe, welcome to Last Call Baseball.
Thank you, Dorian.
Joe, I always find it really interesting when I talk to creatives. What do you feel when you're actually performing?
What do I feel? I feel blessed and privileged that I get to do what I love for a living. I always feel that. And then it really depends on the situation, I guess. Sometimes you're performing in a space that isn't conducive to music, and you kind of feel a little bit put off, but you plow through and make the best of it. Always thinking in the back of your mind, it could be worse. You could be doing something other than what you love, and I still get to play music even though the environment I'm playing in is not ideal. And then there are times when you're performing and you're playing to an audience of music lovers, and they're paying attention and they're being polite and they're responding to what you put out. They're responding to. That's of course an ideal situation, especially if you're in a room that's made for music. So that, in answer to your question, I feel a whole gamut of things, depending on the situation. But I guess universal to all of those situations, it's first of all, I get to play music again, and this is my favorite song. that type of thing.
When you were talking about performing in places that were, some places are better suited for music, it reminds me that I listen to a lot of podcasts or comedian podcasts, and it just rang the bell, because a lot of them say they like playing certain clubs, certain venues, whether it's, less than 100 people, whether it's a couple of thousand people. It just even doesn't matter the size. Is the venue good for audio? Do you feel like the audience is part of it? What goes into that? What makes a place good acoustically? We don't have to get so technical, but I've always wondered that, because I do hear that from musicians and now obviously comedians.
Well, first thing is the design of the room, of course. If you have, perhaps, when we get to talking about restaurants per se, you go into an Outback, or you go into any large cavernous room with solid surfaces all over the place, and what you have is it's like a gymnasium. It's real echoic, and the sound, every sound that's made bounces around 1,000 times and gets all mixed up with all the other sounds. That's bad when it comes to music. But if you have a nice small room or a room that's treated so that all the walls are not parallel, and maybe it's made out of wood, and maybe there's a lot of seats and padding, and you've got people that are, a lot of people that are absorbing the sound, and the sound is more dead, not echoey. Now you're talking about an environment that's more conducive to music. And a lot of people don't really pay attention to that. They walk into whatever environment they're in and they just do what they do. But if you're going to see a show, you want a room that's designed to accommodate music and sound. And then of course the sound system. Whatever sound system you're using, the better the sound system, the better the experience for all. So some rooms you walk into and they've just moved a table out of the way and they say, you stand there. Some rooms they have a stage, and the stage has lights, and the stage has a nice sound system, and the stage has monitors that you can listen to yourself back at or back from. And so, it really spans the whole spectrum of good to bad.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I immediately thought I loved going to a lot of breweries everywhere I traveled. And I've really cut back on beer because it's not very conducive with the stomach in the sense of, trying to
Keep it
maintain
down.
it. Right.
Yeah.
But I always find it so annoying when I'm at breweries, and I'm sure the floors are made of concrete, and
Right,
it
sure.
is so loud. There can be 10 people in there, and
Yeah.
it's like just standing behind a jet or something. So
I always liken it to a parking garage. Parking garages are famously all concrete and all echo. And
we're talking about venues and your hometown. Well, not really your hometown team, but we'll get to your hometown where you currently live in the San Diego area. The San Diego Padres are going deeper and deeper, and they're going to host at least one playoff game in San Diego. But originally, you're from Detroit, and from what I'd read, that you were a Tigers fan growing up, or that's one of the.
yeah,
Why would anyone trade in nice Detroit winters for winters in San Diego? I'm
well,
being completely.
yeah, you're being facetious there, but I lived in Flint, Michigan, and my brother owned a Mayflower truck, and his habit was to, whenever he got a load of furniture in his Mayflower truck, he'd go to the city where he had to drop it off, and then he'd have to go to the Mayflower agency and hire whatever riffraff was standing around the agency to help him unload the truck. One summer, he decided to ask me to help him that summer, so he didn't have to hire a total stranger. So I was on the truck with him in the summer of '75, and we had a load out to San Diego. And when we got to San Diego, we had a 2-week layover where we couldn't get a load out for 2 weeks. So we stayed at his wife's sister's house, who she was in the Claremont suburb of San Diego. And we were there for 2 weeks, and I just got to see San Diego and all its glories. And then I went back to Michigan until 1979, and at that point, I spent the winter of '79 in the back of my Volkswagen van, sleeping in the back of my Volkswagen van, traveling from gig to gig. And I just got fed up with it. And my brother by that time had bought a house in San Diego, and therefore I had a place to land when I got here. And so I stayed with him for about 6 weeks, maybe was it 6 weeks or 6 months? I forget. But gave me a foothold, and I've been here ever since.
When you picked up the guitar, like, how did you know this is it? Because I tried to take guitar lessons when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, I like the idea of playing an instrument and, like, at a party whipping it out and playing some songs. But like, how do you know that this is going to be an extension of me, this instrument? And this is actually pretty, I don't want to speak for you about saying easy, but it's like something that I want to stick with.
Well, I just remember having a natural inclination towards music. We had a piano in the house, and I, would noodle on that, and found that I could pick out melodies on the piano. And then my brother, who was 10 years my senior, brought a guitar into the house, and I dabbled on that whenever he wasn't looking. it intrigued me, and I felt like I had kind of a natural affinity toward music, and I love to listen to it, and I love to sing it, and so I took about 3 lessons when I was 8 years old, and my neighbor, my next door neighbor, was taking guitar lessons, and he played like Chet Atkins. I don't know if you know who Chet Atkins is, but he was a country
I'm guessing
guitar.
he has nothing to do with the Atkins diet, or maybe he
No,
does. Maybe that's his
no,
nephew.
no. He was just a country music icon and a great guitar player, and he had a particular style, finger style guitar, and that's how my neighbor played. I was more into folk and rock and roll, but he was my age, and so he kind of I saw him playing the guitar, and I said, "Yeah, I want to do that." And then I had other neighbors who played the guitar, and eventually I just got a guitar and started buying guitar books and looking at them and figuring it out, and it was relatively easy for me. I was able to pick it up pretty quickly, and then I realized, fast forward a few years, and now I'm playing at high school and junior high school parties, with my peers and my contemporaries, and the girls are looking twice at me now, whereas they wouldn't before. And
That's a
and
huge
then
incentive
later
right
on,
there.
yeah, that kind of clinched it. But later on, I was working. My first job was a busboy in a coffee or in a pancake house. I got called to be in a band, and this band was going to work in this bar, and so I went to work in this band and realized that I could make more on a weekend at the bar than I could a whole week at the coffee house, and that really clinched it. That made me decide that yeah, I'm going to make my living at music, and that was when I was 17, I think.
That's amazing because I think a lot of people now, where, before it was like your job, you worked at it 40, 50, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And in contemporary society, you do a job, but your side gigs, your side projects are the manner that your passions can come out. And I think it's amazing that someone like you is like, I can make a living out of my passion. Because
Yeah,
other people are like, I need to find the time for it. But
yeah,
that's amazing. And I commend you for that. You perform both original songs and covers.
yeah.
But I read that I don't know if it's like a guilty pleasure, but what in the world is Caribbean island music? Because I have something in mind, but I've never heard of the term Caribbean island music.
Well, gee, with me, it goes back all as far as like, have you ever heard of a guy named Harry Belafonte?
Yes.
Okay, he was an actor and a singer and a human rights activist, civil rights activist, and he had the first million selling album of all time, and it was called Calypso. And what he did was he took all these Caribbean island songs and recorded them and released the album. And you've seen the movie Beetlejuice, okay? The song "Jump in the Line," "Jump in the
Yeah. Yeah.
line, rock your body in time." Well, that's Harry Belafonte singing that song, and he also sang "Day-O, Day-O, daylight come and me one go home." Okay, that's Harry Belafonte. So Harry Belafonte basically brought that sound. I'm not saying he's the only one, but he's the one who made it popular because first million selling album ever. And then that was my first exposure to it. And then in the dead of winter in Michigan, when I was still living there, alone in my apartment with a doobie, puffing on a doobie, somebody had given me the album by Bob Marley called Exodus. And I slapped that thing on the turntable, and I had these huge PA speakers, basically. They were my PA, and I hooked those up to my stereo, and I laid down on the floor and put one of these big 12-inch speakers on either side of my head, like big headphones, and just laid there and absorbed that whole album for hours. And then that was the start of it. So Caribbean music basically is it covers reggae, calypso, ska, and then now Jimmy Buffett came along and he incorporated elements of those three styles as well as Zydeco and Cajun music and country music and rock and roll and folk music, and he tied it all together. And now the music that is commonly called trop rock or tropical rock, that's what Jimmy Buffett kind of spearheaded. And so all of those things combined, that's what I call Caribbean island music. I dabbled in it. And then when I got out here to San Diego, I joined a band that was called the Banana Republicans. And we played popular rock and roll music, but we gave it an island arrangement, a Caribbean island arrangement. Like we do it either in a calypso form or a soca form or a reggae form. And so that's what I mean by that.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was thinking that's the first thing that came to mind was calypso with the drums. I don't really know. Like I know it's kind of like a shallow cup where they do the drums for calypso.
Well,
Like it's almost like a very big wine cup.
oh, I know what you're talking about. Those are called steel pans or steel
Right,
drums.
right.
Yes, steel drum is was invented in the 40s because the soldiers were stationed there and they would leave 50-gallon steel drums laying around, and the boys, the young boys in Trinidad, would steal these steel drums and cut them up and hammer them until they made musical tones, and that was the invention of the steel drum.
Well, that's awesome. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, because before that they were using peanut oil cans and whatever they could get their hands on, and then they would have these little bands that they would invent their instruments and then they would play them. And but eventually, when the steel drum came, that was manna from heaven for them because now they had these huge drums that they could. I don't know if you probably don't know much about steel drum orchestras, but they every year during Mardi Gras or during Carnival, they have the carnival down there in Trinidad, and they'll have 150-piece steel drum bands. So it's a pretty big deal down there. And
That's awesome. I mean, I would think being in San Diego, which you can classify it as like tropical, I would think that it's people appreciate it if and when you do the covers before and during the San Diego Padres games, or do you have to like feel out your audience? He's like, all right, let me see let me throw them some different music here and
yeah, that's
see
what you
what
do
hits.
every time. Every time you play a gig, that's what you have to do. You have to figure out what these people are into. And sometimes they're easy to read, or they help you read them. You know, like you play song A and it goes over like a lead balloon, and you play song B and they all clap and yell. Okay, now you got a clue. You know, I just played Creedence Clearwater Revival. They love that. So okay, give them more of that and give them whatever else in that genre you can. And but it's a guessing game every time. You never know.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
baseball fans, huh, I'll give you a clue here. I had this one gig that lasted for 20 years right outside of Petco Park, and I'm literally a half a block away from Petco Park. So I saw approximately 750,000 baseball fans every season because I was there for every home game. And it was outside, so if they didn't stop at the restaurant, they at least walked by me and heard me. So I'm figuring, okay, it's my 10th, this was my 10th anniversary at that particular gig. And I thought, oh, what can I commemorate this with? I know, I'll do a CD of all baseball songs. I said, it's a natural. I'll sell a million of them, because there's all baseball fans here. Well, I made that CD and it was a good one. And I pressed the first pressing, I pressed 300 of them and I did sell them. But the second pressing, another 300, I still have 150 out in my garage, So baseball fans equals music fans? Not necessarily. Even if the music is about baseball, they're just not that. Over the 20 years, I was able to cull from that 750,000 people a good core of fans who did like the music, but they mostly liked baseball. So you never know who you're playing for and what they're going to enjoy. So every time you play, it's always a guessing game.
Is performing outside of the stadium for San Diego Padres. Obviously, now they've over the past, let's say, 5 years, they've had a down year here and there, but which I'm sure affects the attendance, which affects obviously business for you and anywhere you're performing.
Yeah.
But is that part of like the fabric of baseball in San Diego to have performances outside the stadiums? Because I go to a lot of baseball games on the East Coast, and I don't see too many people performing outside. So that made me
Well,
curious.
just to be clear, I wasn't outside the ballpark as much as, I mean, I was, like I said, the restaurant that I play at is a half a block away from the ballpark, yes. But, and I don't know if I should let this out, this is kind of like a secret, but San Diego law says you can't have outdoor music at your establishment unless you get a special day permit, and you're doing something special. But on a regular basis, you can't have music outside. You have to, if you're going to have live music, it's got to be inside. At my sixth year at this restaurant, Vice Squad showed up and shut us down. I was right in the middle of playing, and they said, you have to stop. And they just said, first of all, they didn't have a cabaret license. And second of all, like I said, it's against the law to have outdoor entertainment. Well, I fought it, and I got all my fans to sign petitions, and I went down to the county clerk and filed these petitions. And one of my fans had a friend who was a friend of the mayor of San Diego. And he sent me an email. He said, Joe, sorry you're having all this trouble down there at the Tin Fish. I'll contact my old buddy, the mayor, and see what he has to say. Next thing I know, I get a call from a lieutenant at the Vice Squad. And he said, meet me down at the Tin Fish. I want to hear you play. So I went down there, and he brought a dB meter, a VU meter to see how loud I was. And he okayed me, and I got special dispensation and was allowed to finish out the next 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But so that's maybe one of the reasons you don't hear it anywhere else is because maybe they have similar laws in all those cities. But in San Diego, you're really not supposed to have music outdoors within the city limits, I guess.
Now, again, the San Diego Padres are in the middle of a playoff run. What affects maybe like your performance or even the audience? Because I'm thinking it's a variety of thing of potentially who the Padres are hosting, potentially if it's like a Sunday afternoon game. What are the factors in all of the years that you've been performing that help, I would guess, probably help your performance as well in terms of baseball and music?
Yeah, naturally, sunny days work really well. That brings the spirits up and makes people enjoy the day. And of course, yes, if the Padres are winning, that puts everybody in a good mood. That helps a lot. Out here, we have what they call a California series. So if we're playing San Francisco or we're playing LA, that really packs out the joint, and mostly friendly rivalries, and so everybody's kind of excited about that. Arizona, they're kind of close too. We got a lot of zonies here in San Diego, so if they are playing teams that are like closely associated with the state or San Diego, then that helps. Of course, the economy, COVID, of course, killed everybody, but we're right across the street. The restaurant that I was playing at was right across the street from the San Diego Convention Center. So if things were happening at the convention center, that would also bring in good business to the restaurant. But basically, I would say it's mostly the prevailing weather and what's going on in the sport that would dictate how the crowd would react to me and what business would be like. If business is good, everybody's happy. If business is bad, everybody kind of low down.
When do you prefer to perform?
When do I prefer?
No, when do you prefer? Like, okay, you're like, okay, this I'm actually looking forward to this next one for X reason.
I find that I always go into a performance hopeful. That the right combination of chemistry and circumstance is going to prevail, and I'm going to have a good day. And that generally works. You got to get psyched up to go to work, just like everybody else has to get psyched up to go to work. You got to tell yourself, either I've got a couple of new songs under my belt, and I'm going to try them out, or whatever. You just build yourself up so when you go in, you're you kind of up. And then just like everybody else's job, whatever circumstances, you get cut off on the road or there's no parking spaces or whatever, those will affect your mood and stuff. But I found that at the Tin Fish, what really I looked forward to was I never knew what friends were coming in. Like I said, over 20 years, 81 games a year, I saw a lot of people, and a lot of people would come up to me and say, you're the only reason we're here. So I would see these people sporadically throughout a season, and you'd never know when you'd see them because, I didn't know what ticket package they had or whatever. That they just show up, and it was always there was always a pleasant surprise every day. I would see this person or that person whom I hadn't seen in weeks or maybe even all season. It was the first time they came to the ball game that season. And your question was, when do I prefer to play? And I guess I prefer to play when the most friends are in the audience. And
But it's nice to have that anticipation because, like you said, you don't know if one of them is going to show up or maybe a dozen of them are going to show up the next day.
that's right.
That anticipation part is in and itself is a nice little
Exactly.
anxious excitement.
Uh-huh. And I've always said that I would rather play for one person listening than a thousand people talking. It's I've just never been a real competitive person, and so when I have to compete for people's attentions, that doesn't thrill me much. I come at it hard and I give it my best, but if it continues to not work, then I kind of lose interest and I just kind of phone it in from that point on. And
Right.
you can only go so far and then not get anything back. That's my attitude, maybe my flaw. I don't know, but so when the best times to play for me are those times when there's at least one person in the audience who's come to see me and I know it. Then I'll give it my all, 100% right to them.
Yeah, of course. You perform for people, but what about when someone performs for you in the sense of you can't perform, you can't come up with new material if you're hungry. And so when you go to some place, your local place, maybe for a cup of coffee, a drink, food, where do you like to go where you can be on the receiving ends of someone else's work?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. Where do I like to go to see music? And with that has food and drink. Is
Or
that kind of
both
what you're asking?
or any of that to go see music, to go to get some food, anything that you
Well,
enjoy.
my wife and I have a favorite spot in San Diego. It's called Jyoti Bihanga. It's kind of weird how it's spelled. Jyoti Bihanga. Jyoti Bihanga. It's a vegan vegetarian restaurant or vegetarian vegan. We love small intimate places and quiet small intimate places. And this is the best of that world. It's very clean and bright, windows all around. It's in the community called Normal Heights in San Diego, and it's on Adams Avenue. And the food is delicious. Carnivores and vegetarians and vegans all can enjoy this food because it's like vegetarian comfort food. The main dish there is a thing called neat loaf, like meatloaf with an N, Neat loaf, and it's made out of grains and cheeses and mushrooms and what have you. But it looks like a meatloaf, tastes kind of like a meatloaf, but it's just really good. And you can get a vegan version or a vegetarian version. And they don't serve alcohol, but the food there is just really, really good and wholesome, and the atmosphere is really nice, very quiet and peaceful. I like to go Mexican restaurants too. Lots of those here in San Diego. Our favorite one just closed, unfortunately. We also, well, this is a little outside of San Diego. It's north end of San Diego. The Lodge at Torrey Pines for high end. That's it's part of the Torrey Pines golf course, and So it is really high end, but the view is to die for, and the interior is all stickly craftsman, raw hewn wood. It's pretty impressive
Like
to see it.
Craftsman interior, is that what you mean? Like
Yes,
the actual?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like Craftsman food. I'm like, I've never heard of Craftsman food.
No, the
Got it.
interior,
Yeah.
the architecture is craftsman and just very impressive. And then downtown, like near Petco Park, I'm currently playing at the Hard Rock Hotel down in San Diego. And so when they let me go at the what was the Tin Fish and is now Baja Rick's Cantina, I walked right across the street to the Hard Rock Hotel and asked them if they wanted to hire me, and they said yes. And so today I've been playing all baseball season at the Hard Rock, and it's a nice place, and the food is good there. And they, of course, they also have a high-end restaurant called Nobu, and but the bar is a really big. It's funny. I was talking about big, spacious, concrete floored rooms that echo a lot. Well, the Hard Rock's 207 bar where I play now is big. It's huge inside, but it was designed as a dance club, and they have this huge sound system that's like they got a big rectangular bar that fills the center of the room, and above that bar, in the soffits, is a big, huge dance sound system, which I plug into and play through, and the room sounds surprisingly good, even though it's a big, boomy room. Maybe it's because one wall is curtains and the other walls are reflective. Maybe it's just the right balance, and maybe the ceiling is. I think the ceiling has things that break up the echo. So whatever, it does sound good. But that's a good place to go. And then right outside of Petco Park on Seventh Avenue, on the west side, or would that be the north side? I guess it would be the north side of Petco Park. There's a little hole in the wall called Lucky's Lunch Counter, and I've always enjoyed going there because, especially during the games, like I would finish my set and then I'd tear down my stuff and walk over to Lucky's lunch counter, and it would still be, fifth or sixth inning, maybe even the seventh. But you'd be sitting there at the lunch counter, and of course you could hear the crowd and the ball game going on, and that was really cool. It was a great atmosphere. I love going to the ball games.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for your time. Let us know where we can watch you perform or follow you anywhere on the internet, social media.
Well, let me just say that the best way to find out anything about what I'm doing is just to go to joerathburn.com, and on the front page you'll see my whole calendar. It's always updated, and it'll tell you exactly where I'm going. You can also go there and look at the music page, and you can see a lot of my original music. There's videos to watch. There's even a dedicated page on the website about my 20 years playing outside of Petco Park. And I put out an all baseball song CD in 2013 called The Baseball Songs. And that's displayed there, and all the songs from it are listenable and purchasable. So that's the best way. Just go to joerathburn.com. I know that websites maybe are passe these days, but it is the best way to find out everything you need to know about Joe.
Thanks to Joe for joining us this week. What I was mostly drinking when I was watching the playoffs this past week, and what I will continue to drink as Game 1 of the National League Championship Series between the New York Mets and the LA Dodgers starts later today, is what's in my belly and what's in my hand. It is a delicious rum called Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva Rum, Diplomatic Reserve Exclusive, with some ice, a splash of Coke. Now, this rum is from Venezuela, and let me remind you, public service announcement here. The next time you want to attempt a coup in Venezuela, remember to drink some rum. There was a coup in Venezuela back in 2002 against their socialist, communist dictator, whatever. The dictator down in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, it didn't work out. There was a coup attempted in 2020, partially led by an ex-U.S. Special Forces soldier. Unfortunately, the young man is now in federal custody here in the U.S., and he's facing a litany of charges. But I mean, don't attempt any coups, people. But maybe some rum here will inspire you to watch some winter baseball from Venezuela, winter baseball from Dominican Republic, but most importantly, playoff baseball here in the U.S. because we still have playoff baseball for the next about 3 weeks. Give me a second because I'm going to finish this last bit of Diplomatico Reserva Exclusiva Rum I have here in this cup. Thanks for listening to Last Call Baseball. Be great and get home safe. Go Guardians!